Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Candid show. You're listening to the podcast hosted by myself, Krishna and Shriram. So today's topic is about the current Indian education system, and in which we are going to list out various flaws in the current education system of our country, and we are going to give our opinions in order to improvise the current situation. So what have we got for this topic, Shriram?
Yeah, Krishna, I think because education is a very fundamental and very important part in our society, and I think every single person should be entitled to receive some sort of education in his life. So I think it is very necessary that we have a very good, proper, and foolproof education system, so that all of the future generations grow up to be better citizens. So yeah, so I think I'd get down to the starting with the most important and the fundamental flaw. I think is the involvement of teachers, or rather the importance of teachers in our current system. And I think because teachers play a very important role, play a very strategic role in a student's life, because they can completely transform a student's life. They can actually make the student more interested in a subject. And I think we all must have experienced this, where if the teacher of the subject is very good, we all have much more interest, or we are more inclined to read that subject more most of the time. So yeah, I think teachers are sometimes bound very have this some sort of a huge amount of stress from the management, or rather the actual framework of the system, because even though they want to give us extra information on certain things or certain topics, they are not able to give so because just because of the shortage of time, just because of the sheer urgency to complete all of the portions, and that is also forced by the management sometimes. And also we are also doing this kind of education system where we study only for marks, so we never study for the knowledge also. So in that sense, teachers are never able to actually complete their duties or do give all of their knowledge to us. So yeah, I think teachers have a lot of teachers need to kind of be much more respected. And I think we should the management, or rather the framework in which we currently have our education system, must be more must give them more freedom to actually do their job, I think. So what do you think about that, Krishna?
So yeah, as you told, a teacher plays a very key role in the educational system, where they shape the entire student, and they are the ones who explain the concept in a very better way to the student in order to get marks. So there is also pressure. We have to say this, that the teachers also face many pressure situations, where they have to hurry up the portions, and where they have to cut some portions and teach according to the examination date. So that is something the management must consider, and the teachers must have a good track of time, and they must complete all the portions, and they also must know take care that the student gets the exact concept, and gets the full knowledge from the concerned
Yeah.
teacher. So like each and every teacher plays a very key role in the education system of our country. Yeah.
Yeah, I think moving on to the next flaw, I think the usage of technology in our current system, I think, is very minimal, or at most non-existent. I think because I think we are just starting to actually enter into the actually phase of technological development, where we have started to integrate technology basically in every single phase of our society. And I think education also needs some very big changes, or needs to kind of start depending more on the technological aspect, I think. Because at the end of the day, I think you need to have some kind of fundamental clarity on any kind of a concept, be it to clear any kind of an exam, or be it at least to understand the subject. I think you need to have good conceptual clarity. And I think technology, especially with all of these projectors and smart boards, I think all of these are going to enhance the learning initiative which the student is being given. So I think technology is kind of underappreciated, and I think some people even argue for the fact that technology generally tends to be more and more distracting to the student. And at the end of the day, the student is not going to learn anything if technology is interfered with education. But I think most of them are wrong, or rather their opinions are very narrow minded, I think. Because if we have the right kinds of rules and regulations, if we impose proper kind of restrictions towards the use of technology in education, I think technology is definitely going to change the way our current education system works. So what do you think about that, Krishna?
So yeah, as we spoke in the previous episode, technology is becoming a very integrating part in our life, and implementing the technology in education is something that is very important, and that must be done perfectly. As the technology, as many may point out against me, that it has become a distracting thing for the student's life and his educational point. So usage of it in a very proper way is something very important, and the management must take care of it, and technology. As you see, the usage of technological resources in schools and colleges and other institutions are very minimal, even though if it is present in it, but its usage is very minimal. As you see, even in colleges and
Yeah.
schools, we have these projectors and all the technological aspects like computer labs. So like we don't use it much, and teachers hesitate to teach in the projectors, and rather they teach in the boards and the books. So this has become something very fundamental, that usage of books is something mandatory, and the computer based learning is not something that is present in our country widely. So like usage of computer based education is something that I would recommend for all the education institutes, as technology plays a very key role, and it helps the student understand the concept in a very good way. Yeah.
Yeah, as you told Krishna, yeah, you're right. So I think moving on to the next flaw, I think there is a severe lack of some of these life skill classes such as sex education, literacy education, or financial literacy, or mental health, and some of these kind of classes, even though they may seem of minimal or no importance to us as of right now, but I think these most of these classes kind of help us shape us into a proper citizen, or actually kind of determine our personality when we grow up. I think because sex education is, I think, something very important which every student which kind of must have at least some idea on before he kinds of finishes schooling life. I think because we already see a lot of rape cases getting reported every day, and we know who knows how much is not being reported. So I think the fundamental problem for which rape actually occurs, I think, is because of the lack of sex education, or because of the fact that that kind of a knowledge is not being imparted in a proper way, and also for the fact that people can't seem to accept it, and people all get very awkward, and they get shied away by this kind of teaching method. So I think sex education kind of needs to be like more integrated more into the mainstream, and also mental health is also something very important, I think, which we have to definitely consider, because I think these exams and most of these marks and all of this pressure from the outside world is going to be very irritating for the students, and sometimes they can go to every extreme kind of measures. So I think some of these life skill classes are much more required, I think, because at the end of the day, I think the most important point of education, or rather the important result of education, is, I think, is shaping up your character and becoming a good citizen. So I think some of these classes need to be included more into our mainstream. So what do you think about that, Krishna?
So yeah, as we all know, one of the major crimes persisting in our country is rape. So like each and every day we come to know that there are thousands of cases in our country. So like hundreds of cases around us happening in each and every day of our life. So rape is something that is has become a very great crime, and a very big crime that is inevitable. So the sex education is a very important part of the education system, where they have to teach the sex education in a very early point of life to a boy. So like he in order that the boy would get the knowledge about the sex education, and know how to behave with the fellow human beings, not only girls, with the society and the environment. So like sex education is must also be included as a subject. Like they must teach in schools, and if you teach in a very early stage, as previously told, it would change the mind of the boy, and so like it would shape the life, and they will know what it is, and they will behave properly in the society. And most of our Indian culture, we know that Indian education system, that we most of us hesitate to teach a child the proper sex education, as we see it as something that is a very hesitating part. So like most
Yeah.
of our biology teachers, if you see in our school, they coming to the reproductive part in the curriculum, they also hesitate to teach the students openly about the concerned subject. So that must be very important, and mental health is something that also plays a very key role in the education. And yeah, that is for this, and that must also be included in the system. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true, Krishna. I think moving on to the next flaw, I think this is the most important and the biggest one as of now. I think is the fact that parents and any kind of education institution actually has this undue emphasis or rather extreme stress on the marks and grades the students obtain. I think this is a problem which every single one of us must have experienced in our 11th 12th grades. In fact, I think it would be safe to say that every Indian student must have faced this in one way or the another. I think this is a deep rooted problem definitely, because I think Indians are always is very highly competitive individuals, or they are very competitive about most of the things, and sometimes those kinds of competitions gets very unhealthy, because I think healthy competition is good for any kind of place, any atmosphere. I think healthy competition is not going to destroy the spirit of the actual competition, but unhealthy competition is a lot, especially happening in India. And I think this is negatively affecting students, especially for the fact that their mental health is basically severely affected from this, and this also is going to affect them in their future endeavors also, because of this extreme comparison problem, they generally don't have any kind of self confidence to kind of go out into the world. And I think the parents also kind of significantly lose some kind of trust in their students, some trust in their childs, because they can score marks. So parents also need to be, I think, more and more appreciative of the students efforts. And I think marks and grades should not be actually a very big problem as it is right now, I think. So what do you think about that, Krishna?
So, as you know, we are in a very competitive race in India, according to the Indian educational system, where each and everyone are aiming to get marks, and gaining marks is something that they see consider as achievement. So, like, this must be
Yeah.
changed, and the basic reason why a man goes to school or college is to gain the knowledge rather than getting marks. Marks is something important, but still, it also means that we have to get the knowledge, and coming out of the schools and colleges, we have to get some knowledge about what we learned all these years. Without getting the knowledge and only getting the marks is something that is very not very good, and it won't help the person in any way in the future. So, like,
Yeah.
gaining the knowledge is something very important, and being an educated man means gaining more knowledge rather than getting marks. So no one would consider your marks other than your job. So, like, how much have you educated yourself, and how much knowledge you have is something that most of the general society would consider in you. So, like, education is something very important, and not only marks is something that is about education. Knowledge is the most important thing that a student must get coming out of the institution. Yeah.
Yeah, I think moving on to another one of the small flaws which I would like to end with is the fact that we give a very least or minimal amount of importance to skill based education. And I think this was also something which we previously discussed, I think, because our education system is kind of entirely reliant or dependent upon the facts of theoretical knowledge, or rather, very minimal stress is given to practical knowledge also. And I think that is a very kind of wrong strategy by which we are going about these things, I think, because I think skills is something which is going to kind of help the person in any way, shape, or form in his life. And I think theoretical knowledge is not going to go a very long way in helping him, because any kind of a skill which he acquires in his life, he's going to be able to use it throughout his life. But knowledge is not going to stick with you, or theoretical knowledge will not stick with you at everything down the road, and it is not definitely not going to earn you money as much as skill based education learns you. So there's this very important phrase, or rather a proverb, which says that give a man a fish and you feed him one day, teach him how to catch fishes and you feed him for a lifetime. So our current education system is basically giving us or spoon feeding us information, and we just go it and replicate it on the exams, and we have no kind of a skill based learning system, or we generally don't learn anything out of it except for some kind of theoretical knowledge. But I think we have to start transforming to the phase where the schools or any kind of a education institution start giving us skills, or in the sense they start equipping us with proper amount of skills which is required for any kind of industry. Because I think at the end of the road, or even in our life also, I think skills are definitely going to help us become better individuals. So you want to share anything about that, Krishna?
So, yeah, skills is also very important as equally to the knowledge, gaining of knowledge by a student, and skill is something that is going to determine the future career of a person, and without skill a person can't survive in the survive in the environment, and skill is also important equally to the knowledge. But not only marks is important, but everything must be considered. The point is about considering the extras, like other than marks, other than grades, the skills and knowledge and the practical knowledge must be considered while choosing a student, whether he is fit for this job or not in a considered field. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am moving near the end of the podcast. I think I'd like to discuss some of the minor changes, or rather some kind of tweaks to which can be brought to the current system, by which we can kind of enhance or at least improve the current quality. I think so. I think the very first thing would be to find some kind of a solution, or at least reduce the amount of rote learning which happens in our current system, because I think this kind of a practice, or this kind of a bad habit, kind of starts in the early 6th or 7th grade, I think, because we start mugging up, or especially we start cramming up information, because since there is so much and teachers also don't have enough time to explain all of this stuff properly. So the alternative choice, or rather the easy choice which the student can actually do, I think, is start cramming information, or rather basically mugging up stuff and just vomiting into the exams. And I think that is also easy also. So I think this is the thing which has to be kind of stopped, or it has to be definitely minimalized, because this is definitely bad, because as this keeps progressing, this is going to have a very negative impact on his career and also his general understanding capability also. So there has to be something done to reduce the amount of rote learning which happens. So what do you think about that, Krishna?
So yeah, and gaining knowledge, again coming to that point, as you told, we all study the subjects in a very stressful environment, and we are in the only goal of getting marks and not gaining knowledge, and we all vomit what all we studied under pressure in the
Yeah.
examination. And after the exam, if you ask a student what he studied previously for the exam, he would never be able to answer it, as he would be taking no interest to give the answer. So clearly by this we can see that we are going in a very wrong path in our life, where marks are something like a very big criteria for a person rather than gaining knowledge or skill. So mugging up the subjects and vomiting in it in the examination is not something useful for the student in his career. So he can actually get qualified in the job, but he can't sustain in it for a long time. He will get expelled as he has no skill or knowledge. So that is very important, and getting into the job is not a big it's not a big issue, but sustaining yourself in the job and being there is something that is very important. So for that you need skill and knowledge. So for knowledge, you don't have you don't you shouldn't mug up the subjects. You must
Yeah.
understand it, and the conceptual understanding is very important. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the next minor change, or next biggest thing which could actually kind of impact it in a positive way system, I think, is the fact that teachers could be trained better, or teachers could be equipped with better kind of learning. They could basically be given teacher training courses, I think, to handle the students in a better way, because I think not all the teachers are able to captivate the entire students in the class. And I think few of those teachers are there who kind of encapsulate us in the entire lectures, where we don't even lose our attention for 1 minute and we constantly focus on them. So those kinds of teacher want us, like inspire us to kind of read more and more. And I think those kinds of teachers are those we need in our life, I think, or in the sense in our general system also, because there are some teachers whom have this I'm not saying their system is wrong, or rather their kind of strategy is wrong, but I think they could be updated, or rather they could learn new kind of teaching methods by which they can pull in more students, because I think the quality of teachers is going to greatly determine the quality of our future citizens. So I think teacher training should be kind of a big priority, I think. So what do you think about that, Krishna?
So yeah, good teacher is something important in a student's life. That there may be teachers having knowledge, but expressing it and making the student clear of concepts is something very important. And conceptual clearance must be given, and so the students, the teachers must be well equipped, and the teacher student interaction is something very important. And that is what us for this episode. And Shiram, what would you like to say?
Yeah, Krishna, I think these are all the changes, or the stuff which I've talked about in this episode, is, I think, underlining or stating all of the fundamental flaws, and also the kind of changes which can be brought into the system, which also don't require any kind of a bill or any kind of a radical change which needs to be implemented to bring these changes, I think. And these are also some of the small changes which could be exponentially impacting our system in a much better way, I think. So yeah, that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening to us. And if you have any kind of comments, any kind of any kind of criticism, or any kind of recommendations you want to give us, you can give it in the comment sections below. And thank you for listening to us, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.